guys, Dr. Jordan here, Sports Chiropractic of Utah, your health performance and wellness specialist. This week we are diving into hamstrings and hamstring pain. Last week we talked a little bit about that pain in your butt. We're going to continue that kind of pain in your butt, talking about the hamstrings. Here's the funny part and the irony. I injured my hamstring last night, so this is just uber relevant. So today, I want to talk to you briefly about, first of all, hamstring injuries are extremely common in those that sprint, those that play soccer, kickers, dancers, ballet, gymnastics, anything that causes an extreme flexion and causing your, like if you're kicking way out there, it causes your hamstrings to stretch quite a bit. But honestly, there's two types, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is the most common. It's the one where people are sprinting as fast as they can. They run, and all of a sudden they pull up and they feel like their hamstring goes. Type 2 is when you're in that extreme movement, that extreme flexion where you're maximally stretched and you can actually tear right next to the bone, your sit bone, which is, it tends to be a problem. And that one actually takes a little bit longer. But if you're run-of-the-mill type 1 hamstring injury where you're running, like myself, with my blazing speed these days, you tend to tear part of the tendon, muscle fibers. You can tear a little bit higher, but it tends to be a little bit more of the tendon or the muscle fibers, or even where the muscle or the tendon turns into muscle. That's very, very common. The reason why, when you're running, when you bring that leg up and through, when you're coming to this very end point and you're getting ready to step down, that's when it's maximally stretched, and actually when your tendon right there at the base of your butt is the most weak. And that's why you tend to see those types of injuries. So it's not really, the push down, it's more of the elongating. When you're stretching out, you experience that strain. So I'm going to show you 3 different things that you can do in the very initial stages. And it's very important in the first 48 hours to give it some time. Okay, I would highly recommend resting it. The old RICE principle, rest, ice, compression, elevation. Just take it easy. Don't do anything too crazy on it, or you're going to make it worse, or you have the potential of making it worse. But in the first 48 hours, I'm going to show you 3 things that you can do that are very basic, but tend to be very, very helpful. Now, the first thing we want to do is actually stretch the antagonist. What I mean by that is we want to stretch the muscles on the opposite side of your hamstring. So we're going to stretch your quad and your hip flexor. Those 2 things often get tight, and sometimes if they're too tight can actually lead to a hamstring strain. So that's why you always want to make sure that you're focusing on here. It's not just stretching your hamstring that's important, it's making sure all areas are very well balanced. So very simple, mine's the left hamstring, so I'm just going to show you everything on the left. Very simple, just stretch that quad just like this, kind of lean back a little bit, get a good stretch through there. And when you do injure it, you don't want to move a lot. And when you sit, everything tightens up. So this is a very good thing to do, like today for me, is to stretch out that quad, keep it nice and loose, just like that. I've showed you guys this in the past quite a bit, but this specific hip flexor stretch is where we want to lean forward just like this, raise our arm above our head, and then just get gentle forward motion. Lean forward and lean to the side, just like that. And see, my hip flexor is really tight today as a result of this. And then we want to twist while we move forward as well to get all areas of that hip flexor. The last thing you want to do is actually called neural mobilization. What that is nerve, or neural. We're actually mobilizing your sciatic nerve. At the base of your rear end, on your sit bones, your hamstring attaches and goes down to the back of your knee. When you injure that tissue, there's often bleeding associated with it. You don't have to experience bruising or any swelling necessary on the outside. But what happens on a microscopic level is it starts to bleed a little bit. Then as it heals, scar tissue can form. Because you're so close to your sciatic nerve that also comes, kind of out of your rear end and down and courses along your hamstrings, because of its proximity, sometimes as it's healing, you can get adhesion built up. What that is these little knots that form in there, and limits your nerve's ability to move freely. And if that happens, you get what we call neural tension or nerve tension. You can start experiencing not only lower leg pain, but also low back pain as well. So we want to make sure that we're keeping that sciatic nerve flossed through all of our muscles. So I'm going to demonstrate here, nice and easy. What you want to do is just with a little bit of a bend, You want to kind of lean forward, not too much. You don't want to stretch this thing actively too much in the first 48 hours, especially. We want to just lean forward just a little bit. And then what we're going to do, as soon as you feel a little bit of a stretch, you're going to look down and up multiple times. Your sciatic nerve, yes, forms and comes out through here, the back of your leg, and then down and under your foot. But if you think about it, the origin is actually your brain. Your brain turns into your spinal cord, goes through your back. That spinal cord then goes into a network of nerves out into your body. So by us moving our neck up and down, what we're doing is we're taking that spinal cord and kind of moving it up and down, and therefore moving that nerve up and down as well. So we're putting a good stretch in it while moving our head nice and gently up and down. Repeat that several times throughout the day just to ensure that you have good mobility. And I don't feel like I have too much so far. I don't think any adhesions have formed, which is good. But yeah, repeat that several times throughout the day, 10 to 20 reps at a time, just to get a little bit of relief from there. So those are some things that as soon as you do injure your hamstring, a hamstring injury that's close to your butt, that is. A little bit further down we'll talk about later, but kind of a, let me see here. Best case scenario is actually if you strain it a little bit lower. The lower down your leg that hamstring strain is, the better the prognosis. The higher and closer to your sit bone, the longer it's going to take, just because that's a tricky area to take care of. So try those 3 things. If you know of someone that's injured their hamstring recently, tag them in this video and let them know these are the 3 things they can do until they can initiate the next phases of rehab. If you have any questions or comments, let us know. We'd be happy to answer them. Thank you guys for tuning in to this hamstring week. Take care, guys.